everyone. Welcome back to the Wonder of Anime podcast. I'm your host, Lisa. I am a multimedia anime content creator, and my work spans across my blog, my YouTube channel, and of course, this podcast. I am so excited to be here with my guest today. We've been trying to work this out for a couple months, but we finally got together to record. So I'm so excited to have Mel on the show today. Mel is a host, creator of AniMel. That's so cute. Anime with Mel. And she enjoys sharing candid thoughts and insights on her favorite anime, manga, manhwa, and webcomics. Whether she's recommending a series or breaking down one, she loves digging into the details, researching what makes it stand out, adding her own perspectives, and highlighting what might appeal or not appeal to different viewers. Welcome to the show, Mel.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, we've been working this out for a while.
I'm so happy that we got it figured out and that you're here today, because you're going to be talking about an anime, and we'll get into that, but it's one that I'm not that familiar with, so I'm excited. But before we do that, I did want to learn a little bit more about like what your journey was in creating AniMel and in, anime content creation.
So that one's a nice story just because I felt like I was hitting a milestone in my life and I was like, what am I doing with my life? And I felt like it was itching out of the pandemic a little bit. And I was like, all right, I want to find something new to do, something that excites me. And it was at a point in my life where a lot of my friends were getting into anime and they just were like, hey, what should I watch? I'm really into this genre. And I just was feeling like I was giving out a lot of recommendations and thoughts and things like that. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I could do something with this. Maybe I can make a hobby or something out of it. So my best friend was like, why don't you just start a YouTube channel and, talk about anime? You've been into it for a really long time. Why not? So that's how AniMel got started.
Oh my, I've been saying it so wrong. I'm saying AniMel, but it's AniMel.
I mean, it's
either one.
Honestly, it's either one. I'm not like crazy about the pronunciation. I think I just say AniMel because that's how I pronounce Mel.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. So that's the only reason. But when people say it like the other way, I'm just like, it sounds good this way too.
It does.
So that's kind of how I got started.
I love that your friend was like, you should do something. Like, that's a good friend that they recognize like your skills and that you're like on the path to something. Like sometimes other people see something in you and it's like, you know what? You're right.
Yeah, I appreciate her so much for that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's kind of how I got started. And it's kind of just been something that has been really dear to my heart since I started. And I've loved meeting all sorts of people also in the space as well. That's kind of what keeps me going too. Just there's so many great people in this community.
There is. And it is something I find like the older that you get and your life changing different responsibilities, like having something just to do. Like I find that it's like, a lot of people have hobbies that are like, okay, like I'm watching this, but it's like, okay, what then? Like, does it inspire you to write? Does it inspire you to research? It just inspires you to do something additional. And I feel like those type of hobbies like keep you on your toes mentally. You're just like challenged all the time. I love it. As someone who also creates content, I'm like, yes, we need more things like this.
I resonate with that very much so because I watch something and like my husband and I both watch. We watch One Piece together and we read One Piece together. But sometimes I just want to be like, yeah, this feels like this and the government and symbolism. And he's just like, babe, it's just a fun story though. Like, let's just watch. And I'm just like, yeah, but I want to talk about it in more granularity. And I do understand that there are different spectrums of fans out there. And I like to talk about it in all different ways. But there was just an itch in me that was like, I want to talk about it in a different way. And that's kind of how I use my channel, filter all of these ideas through there.
I love that. And I think it is important, not everyone, because I do think I'm like, okay, not everyone has the thoughts that I'm like, you need to share these. But I think when people are like, oh, it's not that deep, but I'm like, but it is but really it is that deep. And we should actually be more challenging and more critical or more exploratory with what we're consuming, because it's one, it makes it fun. It is fun having these conversations and doing research and being like, oh, this is actually a symbolism of this. And I think that it never hurts to stop learning. And especially now we're at such an age where misinformation is rampant and people are now purposely creating false information and using AI and stuff. It's this is now where it is actually really important to like level up your criticism skills or like your review skills and how you are understanding and like receiving messages through media. Like I'm like, it is that deep.
Yeah,
Like we should all be doing this.
it is. It is that deep. And like again, there are different fans, but it's really nice when you're able to like latch onto a piece of media that allows you to think and it allows you to have like just provoking thoughts. That's what I just find so fun about like a lot of anime. And again, not a lot of people do it, so I filter it through my channel. Some people enjoy it, some people just want something more simple, but sometimes if you just want a thought-provoking piece, sometimes I have those. But I do keep it simple sometimes just to because, you know, doing the research like it bogs down a lot of your time. So sometimes I just want to do something quick. So there's like a flavor of each of those things on my channel.
There's something for everyone.
Yes, there's something for everyone.
So that is going to lead us into getting into this anime because so I usually always start this section by saying like if I've seen this anime, if I haven't seen this anime. I have not seen this anime, but I have another mutual of mine. Shout out to Dad Needs to Talk. His name is Robert, but he runs Dad Needs to Talk, and he actually is somebody that I've seen talk about this show, tweet about this show in an intriguing way. And I was like, oh, okay. So when you mentioned wanting to do the episode on it, I'm like, okay, awesome, because I'm coming in basically from zero, and I love learning. So I'm very excited. So what is Orb on the Movements of the Earth?
So, Orb on the Movements of the Earth, first off, it's a historical fiction. So, I'm going to categorize it in that because it definitely takes some aspects of history and embeds it into the story, but it's more fictional than anything. Orb on the Movements of the Earth is based in the 15th century, and it's around the time where people believed that the Earth was the center of the universe, center of the galaxy, not how we know it today, which is the sun. So it's heliocentrism versus geocentrism. But the idea of the story is more about how these characters stumble upon the idea of potentially like heliocentrism existing and them trying to like spread their ideas. So there's like a whole host of different characters that you meet along the way. It's a story that's done over like a couple decades, and it's just about how one character who discovers this starts putting materials together. He's not able to really like put the idea of heliocentrism out there, but some other people the decade out down the line finds his research material, picks up, I guess, the torch, in for lack of better words, and continues his research. So you see all of these different characters that kind of like get involved in trying to spread the idea of heliocentrism, especially because they have the church at this time who they don't want people to like believe in it. They believe in geocentrism. They believe it's rooted in the Bible. And essentially, if God created human beings in his likeness, then the earth should be the center of the galaxy. And the idea of it being otherwise is blasphemous and, heresy. So they're going up against the church, who are unfortunately taking people's lives, who are basically like trying to instruct the word of heliocentrism. So you're studying at the cost of your own life.
That's crazy. I had no idea this was what the show is about. Oh my God.
It's crazy,
yeah,
right?
I did not suspect, because I mean, you told me this was going to be your anime, but I tried not to like look it up. So I'm completely like, I did not know this was the plot. I did not know. I was imagining like magic. But wow, this is crazy, and I can see why it is. Just even I like Googled the title to see some of the images, and I'm like, once you said like the church and the church trying to silence people, I was like, yep, this is something else, because that is actually what happens in real life, especially with the powers as the church. Wow, I would have never guessed, never, ever. Oh my God, that's such a I feel like unique story too. To be told. Wow. So how did you get introduced to this show, or like, because I think you also mentioned like some other stories that from this creator. So how did you find out about it?
So I found out about it while doing research for one of my like seasonal videos that I like doing. Every time I do a seasonal video, I just kind of like watch every trailer that there is out there. And I'm like, all right, cool. Let's see what I'm interested in. And when I first saw the trailer of Orb on Netflix, it dropped, I feel like a week or a couple of days before the anime was going to air. And I was like, wait, why is Netflix not promoting this? I'm kind of confused. This seems really good. And the reason I instantly gravitated towards it is one, because it seemed like a historical fiction. I really like Vinland Saga as well, so I felt like they're akin in that sense, but not totally akin in that sense. It's not as action heavy as Vinland Saga. But I was like, okay, this sounds really interesting. It's got some violence in it that sometimes I enjoy, but it seems like there might be something difficult, like deeper and more philosophical to all of this. So I think I'm gonna watch this. So that's kind of how it started, and then I just started watching, and I was like, huh, this is like very deep, very verbose. There's a lot of captions to read. Like subtitles are deep. Like I have found myself going back and rereading a few times because the material is dense. But yeah, that's how I found it.
That is, I must have been under a rock. But I will say sometimes Netflix, I'm like, you could do a little bit better
They don't
promoting
promote their stuff.
some of the titles that they have. But it's good that this caught your attention. And I can imagine, like, with the subject matter, there are sometimes, like, if you watch something subtitled, you have to, like, stop and, like, okay, let me go back and let me, like check this in. And I do appreciate that, because I feel like with shows, like, I think that's the wonder of, like, anime is, like, it could be about anything. And it's, like, this is such a
Yeah.
cool concept to talk about, especially I feel like now in life.
Oh yes, exactly.
So
Exactly. It's very relevant right now with current events.
can't imagine why. But so you watch the trailer, you start watching it. When did it occur to you, or when did you know like this was going to be a favorite anime of yours?
So I want to say it definitely took longer, maybe compared to other people, because this anime is only 25 episodes. It's the complete story. The manga is also only 62 chapters, so it's very short. I feel like I started to like sense that this is going to be my favorite, maybe like halfway, even beyond the halfway point, where there's a conversation happening between two characters where they start to talk about the, I want to say like the philosophical idea of like, when is it too much to be like innovative? Like, is there a boundary to like innovation? Is there a boundary to like curiosity? And they start to talk about things where it's like, if God created something as it is, then we should leave it as such. Whereas the other person, who is also coming from the capitalist mindset, I think all of these characters represent different things that we see in society regularly. This person is heavily invested in the idea of capitalism because they feel like this is how they can ensure their security, but they want to like sell knowledge. They want to sell various things. That aside, so this person, one person on the side of God, is arguing, well, if God intended us to die young, then we should die young. Why invent all of these things like medicine and things like that would prolong our lives? And this other person, who believes in capitalism and the idea of selling things, is like, but why not? If we have the knowledge, if we have the capability, if we have the curiosity, why would we not fetch these things? And at that point, I was like, you know what? I can understand both sides, because it's beautiful that us as human beings have like this curious nature. We're able to learn things, we're able to invent things and expand them, and that's why we've been able to live longer lives as it is since like centuries ago. But at the same time, at what point does curiosity become too much? We live now in a society where technology kind of rules everything. I think we were talking a little bit earlier how there's a lot of false information. The internet has kind of breeded like this type of environment that's sometimes very negative, very hostile. It takes away from our livelihoods in some senses, where sometimes we could just be outside playing. But nowadays, people spend a lot of time indoors, on TVs, on phones, on computers. So it's like there seems to be like a boundary here that I'm understanding that they're trying to like emphasize.
That is so interesting to me, because I'm always listening to a podcast. I was listening to a podcast and it was talking about the AI bubble and how investors now are like jumping into it. And it's like that innovation that you're talking about, like chasing innovation because of a capitalistic mindset. And they specifically were talking about how all of these investors are investing billions and billions, and like they don't even know if like the bubble is going to burst and if the investment will be worth it.
Right.
And they were talking about like the .com era, like when internet was really becoming popular in the 2000s. They were talking about fiber internet, and all of these investors like invested so much money into fiber, and then it didn't really at that time didn't really take off, and all of these companies went bankrupt, they went under, they lost their investment. But fast forward 10-15 years, in the 2015s around there, fiber internet now became like like something that they did. So all of that, like all the inventions and all the infrastructure they built at the time, they lost all this money and they're never going to recoup that. But then it did end up being like something that was needed.
Right.
They don't imagine AI in that way, because I feel like the AI technology, as it gets bigger and better, like the other stuff becomes obsolete too fast. But
Right.
it's interesting that that conversation's happening, because it's like literally playing out right now, where people are like, should we invent more? Should we be wanting to be innovative and like keep pushing the limits? And it's like,
Right.
okay, but then at what, like, what cost? What is the cost
Exactly.
of keep pushing that? That's such an interesting. I could see like watching that. You're like, you know what? You got me.
Yes, I was like, you know what? I totally understand what each and every one of you are saying. I understand both sides, and I can't really like say who's right and who's wrong, but this is something that we're encountering like every day. At what point do we say, maybe we should stop here? Doesn't happen often.
No, it doesn't. And I think I do really appreciate media that does that, where it's like there are no villains, there are no like heroes either. Like every perspective is like important. Because I think too, in the sense of, you know, that question, like I always think of like when people are like, oh, well, God didn't want this, they want medical interventions. And I'm like, then why would he give us the knowledge to do the medical intervention? Like, I'm like,
Right.
I always
There's
get there.
like there's like this duality that's being played out here. And you want to know something? I didn't love philosophy growing up. I didn't love philosophy in college. Philosophy is not my thing. So for an anime also to engage me philosophically and cause me to really think, I'm like, okay, I feel like you're doing a good job at selling whatever message you're trying to sell here, whether it's from my interpretation or it's like more definitive. Like the way that it's packaged is like done well.
Yes, and I think even if it just gets you thinking, like then any work of art or any media is like, that's a lot of times that's what it is. Like they want you just to think and think outside of
Yes.
what your understanding of things is. So I can definitely see, you know, having an anime like this instantly, like if you're pondering these. Now me, I don't like getting I can't even say it. Physiological. Sometimes I'm just like, okay, brain turn off. But I see it. So you know, you're watching this now, it's becoming one of your favorites. And what is something about, or whether it's like the characters or the plot points, that you think other people watching, or maybe if there's a fandom for it, are like getting wrong, or there's a misconception about the series in general?
I think that one thing you kind of highlighted is when there are really no villains and no heroes. I can't really say there are like antagonists either at some sense. And I think one thing that like I got wrong in the beginning, but by the end of it, I was like, this is definitely not it. Is the fact that it's about like science and church. It's not really about that. It's more about like the concept of restricting ideas and restricting freedom of thought and freedom of speech in a way, like the ability to learn, the ability to be curious. That seems to be like a bigger overarching message over the fact of like it's the church trying to promote heliocentrism and it's about, I mean, geocentrism, and it's about other scientists or would be scientists that are trying to promote the concept of heliocentrism. At some point, that just goes all out the window, and I'm like, wait, this doesn't really feel like it's about this anymore.
And that makes sense. Like it's always like everything, you know, like the church is the big bad guy. I mean, it has been the big bad guy in history and stuff, but it's like what's behind that? Like it's not just the church, the institution, like what is behind that? And I, again, the parallels to real life of limiting, you know, that thought exploration and limiting people freedom to just explore. And that is so important, because I think, you know, that is how we discover things. It's like, why don't you want us to discover it?
Right.
Why don't you?
Exactly. So there's just like this duality, like in thought, like this endless loop and circle, as I like to think of it, where it's like you say that human beings were made in the likeness of God, and we have these curious minds, we have this mindset, but then you're saying like we can't think these things. So I feel like you're contradicting God in your own way in the aspect of the story. So it's like, so which one is it here? So there's like a lot of hypocrisy, you could say, in the story overall that you're seeing in like many of the characters, because even our protagonists, who we like to see as like the heroes in this story that are trying to promote the truth, you want to say, is of heliocentrism, at some point you start to see like the darker side of them, and one character even starts to question like, hey, I'm doing all of this stuff for the sharing of heliocentrism, but what exactly makes me different from the church? I'm also exerting different violent acts that the church also exerts on people who want to study heliocentrism. So what makes it different? Is it because I feel more just in my cause? There really is no difference between us.
That is such an important and powerful question too, because it does get to that point where, and you'll see this in a lot of stories and historical motifs, it's like if you're doing the same thing but for a different cause, are you that different? And
Exactly.
the fact that the people have to come to terms with that and explore that, but then it's like also then what do you like? You feel like you're right, like you feel like yes, like I'm the one who knows what I'm doing. I have the right thing.
Yeah.
Such an interesting question and always like theme to explore because I always think of, especially now in today's times, like there's a million ways to do something. And it's like, even if you don't think you're doing like the most extreme version, like you're doing something, but sometimes people just go so off track that like you end up doing a full circle and you come back to doing exactly the same things that you thought you were fighting against. So it's like, what is
Right.
your reason? What is your why with that?
Exactly. So like it's these things like that that make you say, all right, this is not about heliocentrism versus geocentrism. This is definitely not about like science versus the church. It's something otherwise. And I think people get lost in the main plot. I guess you could call the main plot, where it's like it's the church and it's these people who are trying to reveal the truth. Why are they oppressing them? But then it comes to an even bigger question. It's like, okay, what's really going on here? What is the base level of all of this? Because if it wasn't the church that was involved, maybe it was another party. Like, would you still say it was them versus the church? Because it still seems like the same concept, the same base problem that's happening here.
That's so interesting to to explore. But I think that also shows like the power of that storytelling, that you think you're going in, you think you're getting one story, and it's making you question your own thoughts, your own morals, who you align with, who you don't align with. And I find that stories like this, especially now, but in general, are just so important because I do think like anytime you approach a piece of media, like we all have our own biases. So we're all like, yeah, I'm going to align myself with the good guys. And these are the people that doing
Yes.
stuff. And then as it's causing you to be like, well, wait, actually, if you're doing this, like, I don't like it when this person does it, but now I'm okay with it because you're doing it. It just goes to show like the power of storytelling and why this medium is so important because it's getting stories like this across.
Exactly. And I feel like even in the sense of people that you would say are the antagonists, the villains, you start to see that they're victims of the circumstances that they're in and kind of got caught in this whole like scheme, this whole conspiracy that's going on. And it's like, whoa, I like really hated you for 15 episodes. And now I'm like, wow, they really played you.
And that is also life too. Like a lot of people are victims to their circumstances and they're in cycles, or if whether it be religious group or whatever racial identity, and it's like they're in there and it's like, okay, well, are you in a position where you can get out? Are you in a position where you can change? And sometimes some people aren't, and they're not going to be able, if everyone around you believes a certain thing, like it's going to be hard for you not to believe a certain thing because that's what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So when now that watch the show, is there an opinion that you have about it that may be unpopular to other people that have watched the show, or if there's like a fan, I don't know what the orb fandom is called, the orb hive?
I will say, like this is an interesting thing because by the end of the story, there's a lot that transpires in the last like 2 to 3 episodes, and even like 1 to 2 episodes prior to that. So I'm gonna say the last 5 episodes, a lot of stuff transpires to the point that it's like, whoa, where do we go from here? This like null and voids a good aspect of the story. So they start to introduce these new elements. They start to, and one thing that's important that they do in the story is that they tell you how much time has passed. Because this is a story of, I guess you could say, like revolution over time. Things can't happen overnight. It takes time for change to happen. And it often takes multiple parties to make something happen, which is something they try to emphasize. So as this happens and many decades pass, we get to a point in the story where they stop telling us how much time has happened. They give us a year. So it leaves it very abstract as to how much time has passed. We haven't seen any of the characters previous to this. It's now like a brand new character. And we're like, okay, they're also giving us a country, like country name, which they haven't done before. Is this a different timeline? A lot of people are like, this must be a different timeline. I'm like, no, this is not a different timeline. This is definitely like still the story. It's just they're trying to confuse us as to what's happening now by bringing like some elements into this that we think shouldn't exist, or bringing in elements into this that's confusing. So I just think it's their way of trying to like confuse the audience. But I mean, this is an anime that probably needs a rewatch or a couple of like take backs for you to like really try to understand what's going on.
That's that I'm like, I'm trying to think if anything that I've seen has done that, but I do think I like when stories also make you question like the narrator and the storytelling, and it like makes you think like, okay, this is gonna be it, and then at the end or like a couple episodes like the switch up, because then it's kind of like, have you actually learned anything from the story that we're trying to tell you?
Exactly, exactly. So like that, honestly, I had to sit on what happened in the last few episodes. I had to rewatch the last two episodes too. I had to sit on that for like 2 weeks. I was like, wow. And then I had like another mutual like text me, and he's like, so what happened? Because the last two episodes were really confusing. I don't understand. And I'm like, all right, these are my thoughts. I can't say this is it because the mangaka has like taken the liberation to leave this kind of open-ended for our interpretation. So these are my thoughts, but I definitely don't think it's a different timeline for these reasons.
That I'm like, now I have to see like what happened if I would get it. That's interesting. That I find that I love storytelling like this, and I like when mangakas are like, I gave it to y'all. Y'all do what do you,
Run with it. Just run with it. I'm not going to tell you what it's supposed to be, but like just have fun with it. And I think that's the whole idea of Orb. It's like it's to make you think throughout. And I mean, it's a shame because Netflix didn't promote it. It's second shame because it's only subbed. So because the material is so dense, like there are paragraphs sometimes, and I'm like, what did I just read? Go back.
That's so interesting because I feel like Netflix really tries to like, I know people get mad when they take a while to like bring certain shows, but a lot of times they do because they're like dubbing it and they want it available
Right.
in like 30 languages before it airs. So I'm very surprised that they didn't dub this in any other language.
Yeah, it got no promotion. It doesn't have a dubbing, as far as I still know, because there are other people that are like, I want to watch this. Is there a dub? And I'm like, no.
Netflix, call in,
Yeah,
check in on us. Let's have a conversation on why this was not dubbed. I just can't.
seriously.
But I sometimes too, I'm wondering if it's like certain like licensing and things like that. Like I also wonder if that may play a role in it, if why things get subbed or dubbed. I always try to think the best and not the worst. But I'm like, I can imagine something like that. But I also think sometimes some shows do get dubbed later on. So
Yeah.
hopefully that's the case of that, because I definitely agree. Some things it's like, okay, give me the dub. Like I need to hear it, and sometimes hearing it
Right.
too gives you a different interpretation of just reading it. Which is why I
Exactly.
advocate for people to do listen and watch it how they want. So when you think about Orb and this story, what do you think the legacy of it is, and what is going to be something down the road that this anime has left like its mark on?
I mean, just the fact that it can connect to like our reality so well, the fact that it's a historical fiction, so it does take some aspects from history itself, so it's not like it's all like fiction. There are a lot of things that are fiction, like the violence itself, so people shouldn't take that as like, oh my god, this is what
This
was
the
happening
instructions.
during yes, this is what was happening during the time that scientists were discovering heliocentrism. No, it was more like, yeah, there was some opposition from the church. That part is factual, but as to like the actual events that you're seeing here, not real. But I think the fact that we could tie this into reality even now, and I think you can tie this into reality at any point in existence, because I think at any point in history, in any country, there has been a point where someone has, or some power has tried to oppose like freedom of thought, freedom of learning, freedom of curiosity, and not just there, but also like some of the morality of these characters, like fighting for what you think is right versus what other people think is right, and how you differ from each other is like something that I feel like can carry for existence for as long as humanity like exists. Because my thought behind Orb is that this feels like a mini dissertation on humanity itself.
That's what it sounds like. It definitely sounds like that. And it is, you're right, like these themes, these conflicts are kind of like, history always repeats itself. And even
Yeah.
now, there's places where people are trying to make sure people aren't educated and people don't have access to knowledge and like people don't have access to learning. And I always think of, when this is kind of, it seems kind of like left field, right? But it reminds me of, like when people are like, oh, voting is like trash, like it doesn't work. And I always think of like, okay, if voting did not matter, why are they trying so hard to make sure that you don't vote? And I think about that now
Right.
with like knowledge, and it's like, why are they trying to roll back like financial aid? Why are they trying to make sure that people aren't getting help? Why are they trying to make sure that the people on the margins are not able to access education? Like it's all
Yeah.
there. It's all realistic. And I think, I always believe like art and storytelling is how we make sure that history is not lost. Because one day the history book's gonna be banned. Hopefully not, but
No more history
it
classes.
feels like that's where we're headed. So
Yeah,
I do
exactly.
think that is an important takeaway from this. And that being said, now that you've watched it, you've watched the anime, you've read the manga, what ways has Orb changed your life or impacted you, that you're not the same having consumed this?
Yeah, I feel like going into this, I was gonna like it just because I knew I was gonna get something out of it. I really enjoy anime that can make me learn. That's why some of my favorite anime are like Cells at Work, or things like that, where I'm at like actively learning something that I feel like I don't know, or like I didn't get as much knowledge on through education. So this one just made me feel like I'm learning aspects of philosophy in a way that I found hard to digest through like a formal educational format. And it now is like causing me to look at things through a different lens, especially when you read news and when you read media. It's like, oh, maybe this is not how it appears. Maybe this is not like how it seems. Like, what are the two different sides to this? And it really makes you, or makes me want to like look at things just a little bit more deeply in day to day life, especially on a macro, like country level.
And I think that ties back into what before I even knew what the story was about. What we were saying at the beginning of the show, where it's like when people are like, "It's not that deep," and it's like, "Well, it is that deep," and this is exactly
Yeah.
why. Like art, manga, regular novels, everything is art. Like this is somebody's story that they are choosing to tell, and it's like even if you don't think it's that deep, like there is something there to be found, and it's like that's why I find like the work that you're doing, the work that I do, like it is important because at the end of it, like there's storytelling there, and it's like it's access to information and things. And I love what you said about like sometimes you need to see things presented in a different like medium, because I feel that way too. Like sometimes I will, it's like everyone has learning styles. Like I'll read something and I'm like, I don't know what the hell I just read, and then I listen to a podcast about it and I'm like, wow, now that I've seen heard this way, I'm so like
Exactly.
I get it now. So I love that
Yes.
this story has had this effect on you, and I hope for people. I feel like it's a little like sometimes when things are too raw, I'm like, oh my god, like it's crazy.
Yeah, it's a little deep. I will
Yes.
say that. It's like a lot of detail. There's a lot of subtitles to read. So like I caught myself being like, "Oh, man, I need to like rewatch these last 5 minutes
Mm-hmm.
because everything that they're saying, sometimes they're saying it a little bit quick, so the subtitles are coming fast." I will say that. But like for what it's worth, if you enjoyed like a historical fiction story, if you enjoy something that's a little bit dense, if you enjoy something that's going to make you think a little bit, I think Orb is fantastic, especially considering how short it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'll be done with it. It's 25 episodes. You don't have to wait for season 2. You don't have to worry about like are they going to come back or not.
Right.
And I mean, the animation's beautiful. Madhouse did it.
It does look good from the when I googled it. The images of the people look incredible. So I
I mean, they're very realistic.
yeah, they look. It looks a little bit like Full Metal Alchemist meets Metal Alchemist Brotherhood meets like the last season of Attack on Titan. Like that's what that art reminds me of.
Yeah. You know what? I can see that.
Yeah,
I can see
I
that.
feel that's what I'm seeing. But are there any fun facts or any random things that you learned like about the series or the making of the series after you watched it, or anything random that you know?
So, very fun facts are that the last character that we get introduced to is a real astronomer.
Is it
In
Galileo?
this, no, no, no. So, the real astronomer, his name is Albert. I can't pronounce his last name, it's Polish. So, obviously, like, people can tell. They say like country P, and they also say like all of the names are Polish names. You could kind of tell like this is Polish in a way. But Albert was the person to educate and inspire Copernicus to create the model of heliocentrism that we're kind of familiar with today. So they bring up this character, and he does end up educating Copernicus that they talk about in the epilogue. So this is all history, so no spoilers really, but as to what leads up to it is the real story.
That's cool.
That's one fun fact. And then there's a character named Okuji. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He's symbolic in a way that he plays a certain part in the story, and this certain part in the story has something to do with his eyes. Apparently, Okuji means eyes in Polish, or eye in Polish, so I thought that his name was very interestingly placed for him.
Ooh. Well, that's cool. Thanks for sharing those fun facts. I love little things like that. Like, you're like, oh, you were really thinking about this when you made this.
Yes. I was like, wow, you really thought about this. Like, because a lot of these characters are totally fictional. You know, if anybody goes into this and they're like, are these characters real? Because you obviously know that some parts of this is real, like Albert and Copernicus. But what about the rest of them?
Right.
You know, are they real? Like, definitely not. But it kind of speaks to, like, this idea of, oh, maybe they're like characters or people that were not recorded in history, because you know often that's what happens. There is a lot that leads up to the point of the creation and invention of something, and there are a lot of people that come before that happens that are not like recorded in history, so they kind of like play on that idea, like they're not really real, but maybe they're just not recorded in history.
Yes, and like they say, the writers of histories are the victors. So there's always going to be those people that aren't deemed as the victors, or aren't deemed as important, even though they might have been the catalyst for that
Right.
to happen. So yeah, I get it. That's so it feel like it always is like that. But I think that's the fun thing about historical fiction. It's like you have the playground kind of like to add in things. Like you don't have to be 100% historical accurate. So you can like add in a
Yes.
character or add something, like your mind fills in the blanks of like what
Right.
possibly could have happened to lead to this. So I was like, I like historical fiction as a genre for that reason, because it's like, let's play in this old timey times.
Right, exactly. And I feel like that's done really well with Orb. They're like, we're teasing these real things that happen. Like if you look it up, it's historical, it's real. This is absolutely verified, but like these other things, we'll leave it up to your own ideas and your own thoughts. So I feel like Orb just does that really well. And then with coupled with the animation, I will say that I've never seen the night sky look so beautiful in an anime before.
The little picture that I just saw on Google Images looks crazy. So
Yes. I was like, wow, Madhouse, you went really crazy like on the sky. Like if you went out into middle of nowhere, unfortunately I live in a light dense like area, so I'd never get to see the stars, but if you go out in the middle of nowhere and you look up at the sky, like I felt like I was really looking up at the sky at one point when I was watching like one scene. I was like, and they make it really breathtaking, and I'm like, wow, I have a new appreciation for the night sky.
yeah, you're like, I've never seen it this way. No, I love that. So as we wrap to a close, Mel, I'm so happy that you've introduced me to this anime. And like I said, I was mind blown because I never would have thought that's what this anime was about. And I was like, wow, this is crazy.
I really tried hard not to spoil anything because there's some crazy stuff that happens in this anime. Forget like the dense stuff, like the like plot points and what happens to some of these characters is actually really outrageous. Like I will say the first 3 episodes, by the end of episode 3, I was like, oh, why?
Those are the best. Those are the best where you're like, what is happening?
Yes.
So I may have to, when I have the brain capacity, to
Yeah.
check this
It
out.
requires like lots of like downtime. Like no
Yes.
one's disturbing you, no one's talking to you. I remember my husband walked in once while I was watching the last episode. He's like, "Hey babe, I have a question." I'm like, "Shh,
No, no.
I need to pay attention." He's like, but you're like just watching an anime. I'm like, no, 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 no. It's deeper than
You
this.
don't
You
get
have to
it.
give me like, I said, it ends like in 8 minutes. Can you please give me like these last 8 minutes to finish this? And then he comes in and I'm done watching it. And he's like, okay, can we talk now? I'm like, no, I'm writing down my
Hold
thoughts.
on. Like, I'm not. Yeah, no. I've had those moments where I'm like, let me process. Let me think about this. No, I love when an anime can do that. So that's awesome. Well, thank you, Mel, so much for coming on The Wonder of Anime and talking about the wonder of orb on the movements of the earth. I don't know why that title didn't give it away for me that it was about this, but I was thinking magic, so I get it.
I mean, you don't know.
You don't
You
know.
really don't know. Like, you watch the trailer, the trailer's really ambiguous. You really don't know.
You're like, I didn't think of this, but that it all is coming together now. So do you have any upcoming projects or, anything to promote, or just letting us know where we can find you to consume AniMel?
I mean, promotion wise, I'm working on a couple of things. I'm trying to get back into stuff. As some of the people who follow my channel already know, I've been on hiatus for a while, but I am working back on coming. I'm working on coming back from the hiatus where it's got flipped around there. And I definitely have idea of working on some of the wrap up of Kaiju number 8. Was really into the manga that wrapped up over the summer, so I'm working on my breakdown for that. The notes are there. It's just sitting down in front of the camera
Yes.
that needs to happen.
But
yeah.
I find that it's like awesome when I have a bunch of things and notes that I'm like, I need to sit down and record them. So then you just have a lot to do.
Yes, there's definitely a lot that will be happening and that will be coming out. But until then, you can find me on Instagram. It's __ AniMel. Everywhere else, it's AniMel. You can find me on Threads. You can find me on TikTok, but you can mostly find me on YouTube. That's where you'll find most of my content.
Yes, and I will have links to all of that in the description of this episode and on the YouTube post for this episode, so people will be sure to find you. But for everyone listening or watching, thank you so much for tuning in. Of course, leave your comments, your thoughts. If you've watched Orb, you want to get into it in the comments, go ahead, have at it, because I can imagine the people who have watched this probably have a lot to say.
I mean, usually when you read like the Reddit for Orb, it's like dissertation deep. I enjoy it. It's a little bit fun to like peek in there and see what people are writing out in their different theories.
That's my favorite part. Whenever I finish a series, like, because I'm always anime only until the anime is done, and then I dive into the manga because I'm like, it's two completely separate worlds. So then once I've watched the anime and I've read the manga, then it's Reddit time. So I'm like, okay, what were other people's theories and thoughts? And then it's Tumblr time to see the edits and see like the fan edits and stuff like that. Because I'm like,
that's deep. You take it like levels.
Yeah.
You take it like levels.
I'm like, that's my favorite part when I finish something. I'm like, I can, because I'm heavy on muting, heavy on blocking. Like, you're not going to spoil stuff for me. I don't want to, like, I also don't like engaging with stuff that I like. If I really love it, I'm like, I don't want to know people's thoughts while I'm engaging with it. So it's like, once I'm done with everything, I'm like, the veil has lifted. Let me get everything.
Yeah, I mean, you need that unbiased like idea, especially with content creating. So you come like as your most like authentic self in terms of like thoughts and concepts. So yeah, it is hard when you're out there. Like sometimes I'm just like in it. I'm like, I want to talk to people about it now, and then I talk about it later. But yeah, I totally understand that.
Listen, because I also feel like I try not to. Sometimes somebody can make a throwaway comment about something and it makes you think differently about it, and you're like, I'm like, no, like, don't let my pureness, what I thought about this beforehand. But yeah, so thank you so much to everyone listening. We will see you on the next episode. Peace out.